New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
New Thought Media Network proudly presents Having Courageous Conversations, where real talk dives deep. Each week we go beyond surface talk. We open our hearts, speak our truths, and dive into the stories that shape us. No scripts, no filters, just powerful, unforgettable conversations about life, purpose, healing, and truth. Join the conversation, because your voice belongs here. Please like, share, and subscribe. Check out our YouTube channel at Having Courageous Conversations or email us at yourshowyourvoice@gmail.com. Now, let's have a courageous conversation.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are joining us from. Welcome to Having Courageous Conversations. Thank you for joining us. This is a place where we explore truth, growth, and conscious living. We believe that when we speak from the heart, listen with compassion, and hold space for one another, we create possibilities for healing, growth, and real connection. I'm Cheryl Rogers, and it is my joy to be here with you today. And joining me is my wonderful co-host, Mark Dupuis. And together we're honored to guide these powerful conversations. And Mark, I'll invite you now to introduce our guest for today.
It is a pleasure. Thank you, Cheryl, for introducing the show and yourself and me. And I'm just thrilled to have Mel here with us today. And the topic is, you're going to remind us because we did an about face here. So I will introduce you and you will introduce your topic, if you don't mind. Mel is a dedicated restorative practices practitioner, interfaith spiritual director, and mindfulness meditation teacher with a deep passion for nonprofit and community-centered work. A wild creative at heart, Mel is published author and poet, and a lifelong learner and a natural connector of people and ideas. Laughter, storytelling, growing awareness, and the shared experience of navigating life's struggles are central to Mel's way of being. Their work is rooted in the art of and practice of being present with more of what is, inviting others into spaces of authenticity, compassion, and collective growth. Thank you, Mel, for coming to this stage, as well as for speaking at Unity Kitchener. And this is like a part two of what 2 Sundays ago you came and spoke to us. So thank you. Welcome. And I'll be quiet to come on for you to come on now.
Yeah, thanks. I do like me a good bio reading. I always hear them and I think, oh man, that person sounds awesome. It'd be fun if we could just introduce ourselves with our bio, how much more connected we might be. So the topic for today, the invitation, is to lean a little deeper into the idea of multi-partiality, which originally is a tool utilized in group facilitation to listen for whatever the dominant narrative is and to weave in other possibilities, intentionally challenging the conversation and also inviting us to perhaps think outside of our belief, our current understanding, and our conditioning to stretch it back out to include other people. And so, put simply, it's the art of making the space bigger than the experiences that are both in the room or could be in the room. So weaving in other possibilities other than a dominant narrative. So could be a dominant narrative, like I articulated in the talk I offered, that side dish is carrot and peas. And everybody says side dish, carrots and peas. And somebody comes along and says, yeah, I'm eating a salad. It's a side dish. And in multi-partiality, there would be room for that. There would be room for divergence. There would be room for personal experience and uniqueness, and room being actual space to exist, to breathe, to explore. And it would be within our imagination to imagine that there's many ways of being and doing, and then within our capacity to hold space for that.
Beautiful. So how is multi-partiality different from neutrality or objectivity?
Oh, I love that question. So multi-partiality, neutrality is oftentimes misunderstood as I, the practitioner, have no opinion on the matter, and I stay oftentimes emotionally, mentally, or unmoved by opinion. And it is then when practiced that the practitioner does not give themselves room. So neutrality in the context, say, of a mediation makes sense. Hey, it's not my conflict, so I'm not going to insert myself and think I need to fix, rescue, advice, give, and I'm going to give room for that. That is an application of neutrality that makes sense. Multi-partiality is where the practitioner themselves may hear a dominant narrative. And oftentimes those are all or nothing statements. And those are assumptions about, well, everybody celebrates Christmas. Well, maybe in a multi-parting technique, the multi-part practitioner would say, I was really surprised to learn that there's 11 to 14 holidays in December alone. And that would allow gently another piece of information, another possibility to enter in the space that people then interact with. And so the piece of being in and a part of, rather than objectively and or neutral, is that we are aware ourselves, both of ourselves and of the world around us, in a way that invites us to then notice when a narrative becomes stale or dominant with one idea in absence of other possibilities.
Beautiful. Yeah.
And so when you use the word practitioners, I'll chime in there in a second, Cheryl. When you use practitioner, you're not, I believe you're the individual as a practitioner in life. Right?
Yes.
Is that what you're saying? You're not talking about somebody that you go in and open the door and there's a practitioner. You're speaking of an individual who is in a situation.
So I describe it two ways. Practitioner for me, when I heard it put this way, it made a lot of sense to me. And so I'll offer it to you. For me, we can practice anything. We can practice being close-minded. We can practice being dismissive. We can practice seeing the world as against us. We can practice anything. And so multi-partiality practitioners are practicing the art and the practice of seeing, the art and ways of being and doing that see a multitude of perspectives, that grow awareness and have a capacity to stay present, and hold spaces that have then bigger robustness for the experiences than experiences bigger than the space. And that is a simple equation. When the space is bigger than the experiences, the result is connection and healing. When the experiences are bigger than the space, the result is disconnection and harm. So if my worldview is very little. I can hold very little space for experiences outside of my own. And I may want to do that. And that is, I suppose, then my choice. What I've found is more people that want to experience more of the world, but meet themselves or barriers to doing that in the process. So that is the practitioner that I talk about. In the formal setting, multi-partiality in group facilitation, and that's a formal articulation then of the informal practice of viewing and seeing the world that way and navigating it, is a practitioner then who is intentionally creating challenge or disruption to a space or a narrative to shake things up, to make more room. So I am both somebody who utilizes multi-partiality as a facilitation tool as a facilitator, and I am also a multi-partiality practitioner, because how we do anything is how we do everything. So if I think I'm only bringing my values and skills with me when I'm formally in a workshop, I've missed a key piece of what embodiment and value-based living looks like.
So where did you hear about multi-partiality and what drew you to it?
That's a great question. So I started to look for a term to articulate an experience I had. At the time, I was closeted, working in a workspace, and I met a colleague, and this colleague just had the ability to listen, to hold space, to not seem offended by my reality or my truth, and seemed open to hearing it, and was particularly, unlike many experiences in my life, not personally like, it wasn't destroying their world for me to exist. It wasn't, I felt like they could hold their own and I could be me. And so slowly, even though their presenting identities were completely different than my own, slowly I started to find myself slow playing my truth, adding a little bit more of who I was and being met. And sometimes I was met with shared laughter, sometimes tears together. So again, this person was with me and walking alongside me in that journey. And the next time I would meet them after I shared that thing that felt maybe shameful, or I was really afraid about, or I was blaming myself for, the next time I would meet them, they would greet me with this sense of unconditional regard and care and respect. And I was like, what is that that's happening? And so I started to research and came across the term multi-partiality in facilitation. It's utilized in classrooms. It's utilized in disrupting space. And what I came to understand is that that person holds that distinct quality of being able to create really, really big, robust space. It's like they made a decision to really know about the world around them, and that they could understand that the person sitting in front of them was an expert in their own life. So it wasn't about needing to know about everything. It was their ability to trust themselves, that they could be with what was and hold that space and listen and be present and be curious and notice and add and weave other possibilities into the space that eventually could then support me in holding more of who I was and more of my story, which in part was a coming out journey. How do I come back and into who I am?
Mm-hmm. Oh, beautiful. What a lovely experience.
I love that I wrote it down, expert in your own life. Wow. Aren't we all teachers? And sitting back and realizing that sometimes is a bit of a challenge, because it's sometimes easy to say, okay, you're the expert. Mm-hmm. You know what the answer is for me.
Yeah, or that we need to somehow be the expert on all the possibilities of lived experience that exist. But it isn't that. It's not quite like that. It is that, like when I think about barriers to space, it's responses that sound like, oh, I couldn't even imagine or I have no idea what you're talking about, or a sense of tiredness in response to an experience that's different than one that you've heard about. Oh, there's always something new coming up. I shouldn't have to learn new things. Rather than just being like, well, thank you for sharing that. And thank you for letting me know who you are. And how have you been experiencing that? And what have you noticed since you came to hold this truth about yourself? And so again, the practitioner, the restorative practitioner, the multi-part practitioner has a robustness for being able to meet what emerges, to meet what comes up, and say hello to it, to welcome it. And when we can do that with another and have that mirrored, it is incredibly powerful, and more than mirrored, reflected. The reflection of that thing which is there for you is there. And I know that sounds simple, but we spend so much of our time rose-colored glassesing things. Oh, you couldn't have possibly meant the thing you said or did, rather than just simply being with that for a moment. And then slowly learning the skills to interact with it, whether it's an emotion that comes up or toward us, whether it's a thought or a feeling, a piece of our identity, who we are, is there room for it? And the conditions are the conditions there for which I would be likely to want to share or to offer who I am, or feel like I could show up in that space. Kind of at its root, the idea of asking the question within myself, can I feel and choose right now? And as a facilitator, am I creating spaces where people can feel and choose? And what needs to be present for us to stay in that place of being able to be with hard things and see our choice?
Yeah, so I think what I felt when you started speaking about it was that really what you're doing is you're opening space, you're opening up, and giving somebody else that possibility who may be quite closed. But by the way you approach the conversation, you open it up for more possibilities.
Yeah, and the way that we hold space. So again, is there room for a multitude of people and spaces? So one of the things that I say is, if you look around and you see about the same type of person in your circle, your community, etc., that's information. And it's likely then that there's been some conditions set that create that outcome. And so with multi-partiality, there's this desire to relate across differences. There's this desire to have experiences different than your own. There's this leaning into wanting to feel what epiphany feels like. And epiphany is that moment where we learn something we didn't know before. Now imagine if we sat down at tables, communities, conversations, circles, wanting to experience epiphany. What would change? Because it would mean I would need to let go of thinking I know. I'd know I don't know. And in fact, the more I learn, the more I know I don't know, for sure. I'd need to let go of the idea that I'm right, or that there's one right way. I'd suggest that we have to let go of the idea that learning is ever done. Oh, you know what? I've heard enough about that. And so when we, my writing coach, Rosemary Trommer, speaks of this in writing, but we sit with a piece of poetry or a piece of writing that we ourselves wrote to ask it what else it has to teach us. And it's our own writing. So if I'm sitting down with my own writing saying, what do you have to teach me that I haven't learned before, and seeking that epiphany from it, imagine what's sitting in space with other people different than yourself, ideally different than yourself. I would seek that because I want to have the experience of that richness and robustness in my life, because life in and of itself is literally anything, everywhere, all at once.
Absolutely. So you need to you need to let go of your ego, your own identity, your history. You need to be present, basically. Just
Yeah,
be present.
and with who you are in that space. So it's with multi-partiality and with restorative practices in general, it's understanding that every single person in that room has dignity and worth and value. And so how do we show up then in ways that maybe it's me pulling up my own socks that day. Whoa, I need to be aware of what I'm saying and doing and how I'm being, because I actually matter in this space. And likewise, every single other person does.
Right.
But we learn then what it means to bump into each other, rather than doing what oftentimes happens, which is almost a condition, like a square dance. Oh, if you're stepping in, I'll step back. If you're stepping in, I'll move back. And on it goes, because to stand shoulder to shoulder means that we intentionally seek for moments where we bump into each other and we actually want that bump. As one of my really nerdy friends said once, neurons pass information when they hit each other. And so you have to kind of hit into each other, hit into what you think you know, and hit into another to be able to sort of learn and keep moving and expanding. And so there's a real somatic piece to what it takes to move through various spaces and places and invite people to be themselves along the continuum and stay connected and keep learning.
As you were talking a bit earlier, Mel, what was going through my head was washing dishes. And then further to that, when you were talking about sitting at the table with others, I'm going to throw in perhaps practicing spirituality in different ways. You didn't say that, I'm putting that in. So I'm often saying I would like for us at Unity to bring in somebody from a different faith perspective and learn. I'm so eager to learn and grow from other people's beliefs and practices. Not that I'm going to adopt them. I just want to know. And further to that, I'm thinking, okay, washing dishes. This is the way you wash dishes, right? 95% of the population washes dishes this way, but somebody comes in and they're doing it totally different. So I have this perspective over here that I want to learn and grow with other people, other faiths, but don't come in with this basic washing dishes and change it up. Like, wait a second, no. And I've had an experience like that just fairly recently, not about dishes, but I've had an opportunity to sit back and grow and go, okay, this is the way they wash dishes. Isn't that interesting? And when we're interacting, I won't wash dishes the same way as you, but I have a respect for how you do it. So, yeah, just my head is percolating.
Yeah, so that kind of analogy comes up often, that that it is that part of ourselves that says, okay, but I found this group of people that will do it the same as me. And there's comfort in that, because we want to feel connected, because we want to belong, because we want to feel a part of something. And that's a certain particular type of space and experience, and groups of people choose to do it all the time. And there seems to be also a desire amongst a group of seekers to be able to experience what I would translate into language of unity as many paths, many people on those paths, many places on the paths for which people might be. And so again, when we want to hold practices, that's its own practice. So when I say, like, what does it mean to truly practice being in space with other seekers who are practicing growing their curiosity, desire, ability to listen, ability to be present with a completely different path, a completely different articulation, and still see it as part of the root system of the trees, to still see it as part of what's feeding the trunk, to still see it as part of what creates those branches, and then ideally to come to appreciate it, or in Buddhism particularly, to come to see myself in that other and the other in me, until we come back into this reality, awareness, and truth that everything's connected, and that we're connected, and that we're not separate from.
Cheryl, you're on mute, my dear. What brilliance were you saying? There you go.
Sorry, I had a little bit of a coughing episode, so I've muted myself. I was going to say that I have another question, but I think it's going to take a longer discussion. So I think right now we should have our 2-minute break. And don't go away, because this is a wonderful conversation and it's evolving. And I'm learning so much. So thank you, Mel. I hope others are too. But listening to what you're saying is really expanding my understanding of what it means. So thank you. So don't go away. We'll be back in 2 minutes. And then we will continue this conversation because I really want to know about multipartiality. And how does it work when there's a power imbalance? So we'll talk about that when we come back.
Help us say thank you to all of our organizational sponsors, including the Hepperlin Foundation, Affiliated New Thought Network, International New Thought Alliance, Science of Mind Archives and Library Foundation, Center for Spiritual Living Denver, Center for Spiritual Living Midtown, New Thought Philadelphia, Center for Spiritual Living United Life, Sunshine Cathedral, Planned Happiness Institute, Summit Center for Spiritual Living, One Heart Retreats, Universal Joy Center, Unity Kitchener, Unity Spiritual Center Ottawa, Home Center for Spiritual Living, Satya Center, Begin Within Ministries, Center for Spiritual Living North Jersey, Unity of Savannah, and the Center for Spiritual Living Seattle, as well as all of our individual donors. On behalf of New Thought Media Network, thank you, and please like, share, and subscribe. New Thought Media Network, come be you.
So welcome back, and wow, what a wonderful conversation we're having. So Mel, before we left, I mentioned my question about how does impartiality work when there's a clear power imbalance?
Yeah, so multi-partiality, because impartial, that's where it becomes actually problematic when we talk about being, say, on the rights, the fence with human rights. And so, hey, I don't want to, and it's like, no. Multi-partiality in power imbalances is another way of saying when there's a dominant narrative, hey, this group of people is the right group of people doing the right thing, which is rooted in the disease of dominance, right? So somehow this way of thinking is the right way of thinking. And if you're not doing that thing, you're out. And so in multi-partiality, that's particularly in context. So in formal context of its use, that's particularly what it's used for, is to grow the practitioner's ability to stay responsive and to add or weave in another possibility, another truth that challenges and invites the group. So without using fear, shame, or blame, within the delivery, to offer other possibilities of ways of being and doing that are currently existing or present. And so what that might sound like is I might be at the lunch table and somebody says, so what's everyone doing with their partner this weekend? And as a multi-partiality practitioner, I might say, well, I'm actually, and this is whether I myself personally have a partner or not. Oh, well, nothing exciting with a partner. Of course, not all of us are seeking a partner or have a partner. And here's what I'm up to. And so offering that, naming that wouldn't be the only possibility, and also offering what I'm up to might be the case. Or, when I'm in spaces, particularly as somebody who identifies as non-binary, which for me would be quite simply to say that when people describe an experience of woman or an experience particularly of ladies, I don't know what that means. I don't have that same frame of reference, and the roles and responsibilities created in our culture I don't identify with. It's not that they're right or wrong. It just most of them don't really have me felt and reflected. And so I've been in rooms where it's like, okay, ladies, we're all going to do our nails, because you know how it is. We all love doing our nails, and I do love doing my nails. So that's great. It works. And I am aware that not everybody loves doing their nails, and that's not actually particularly a thing that only one gender identity enjoys, that many gender identities can enjoy doing their nails. And so that power imbalance persists when we don't mention other ways of being and doing in our space. So the space stays small, but then we wonder why other people aren't in it. And it's like, because the space is smaller than the experiences, and we cue people to what can show up and what can't show up. And we do that in the ways that our values are integrated into our processes and procedures and spaces. And we do it in the ways for which they're disintegrated into our process, procedures, and ways of being together. And so we tell each other what's going to sort of fit there, or what we mean by that, implicitly and explicitly, consciously and unconsciously. And so multi-partiality seeks to bring more of it to explicit and conscious, and bring those things into the space and challenge it. So when the space is this small, that can become one problem. Or when we put the labor on the person who doesn't fit within the space to have to be the one that continuously names it. So in that lunchtime example, is it the person who chooses to be consciously single? They may actually have a fantastic life, that needs to say, hey, a very valid way of being in this world is consciously single. Or could it be someone like myself who is partnered, who says, I have a few friends that are really killing it with the consciously single, and in many ways are much more rich and robust with life and friends and connection and community. Can I bring in the possibility that there's other ways of being, so that labor isn't on? Right? Or say maybe we're in a call and there's a projection on me, and it's like, how's everyone's, I'm trying to think about other examples, but there's, whether it's cisgender, whether it's heterosexuality, whether it's, having kids or not having kids. It's those ways that we respond to one another. So for example, maybe I am, fully, literally deficit interest in having a partner. And the person in front of me, and maybe even a listener right now, is saying, yeah, who wouldn't want a partner? This person in front of you that's saying they don't want a partner is the person who does not want a partner right now. I mean, they can change their mind at any point, but that is who. So that's there. But our responses tell a lot, because oftentimes then that person will hear things like, don't worry, you'll meet somebody. It's okay. You know, like, it took me a while to meet my match. And we perpetuate a narrative that says that's the right way to be.
We use the narrative of our own belief system.
That's right. And so when we grow our world view, we grow room to meet other people in their worldview, and to understand the difference between needing to have and share that, and having the capacity to respect that. And that was something I learned in my journey, was a critical question to ask when I would be challenged on my gender identity, sexual orientation, is I would say, you know, are you struggling right now to understand, or are you struggling to respect? Because I actually don't need you to understand me. I'm complex. I'm still figuring out understanding me. And then when I think I got a grasp of it, I keep changing and evolving. So I'm kind of done with the idea that I'm ever handing somebody a nice little box of this is who I am and this is what's going on for me. But once I got intimate with the multiple parts of me, once I became aware of them and could hold them without fear, shame, or blame, my need for others to understand me dissipated. Because my inner understanding of me grew. And then my capacity for somebody else in front of me to have an experience grew. And then I could interact and be with more people different than myself, which again, I want to. So then it's a value I hold. And then it shows up in all the different ways that I live my life. And I challenge myself into more of what that looks like.
So it sounds like it's an internal and external process.
That's right. So when we think about power dynamics, oftentimes we want to push like this on everything that's outside of ourselves, those systems, those things that are doing that. But it is actually to push like this and to stretch the space, which is a very different articulation, but it means that we bring ourselves with us. And we would look at the ways that we are contributing consciously, unconsciously, implicitly, explicitly to continuing or perpetuating small spaces for which very little people, or very few people can show up as their full authentic self.
It's a lot to think about.
I'm sitting in the room with these people, okay, I've lost my train of thought. So somebody says to me, okay, so what are you doing with your husband tonight? Because they know I'm married. And I'm like, okay, so yes, I'm married and I might be doing something or not something with my partner, but I'm not married to a man, I'm married to a woman. And then, okay, so there could be the presumption, oh, I didn't know you were a lesbian. Well, no, I don't identify as a lesbian, and I'm a Marg. That's who I am. I'm a Marg. And then I'm sitting in the same room, and I want to know about Cheryl, and I'm curious about Cheryl. I don't need to know about her, but I'm curious. She's a living human being, but I'm afraid to ask her. I'm afraid that I might say the wrong thing. And I assume there's probably people that would be afraid to ask me, or because they're not sure. So what do I say around Marg? So there's like, I'm in a position, I'm in the life of Marg can have people assuming, questioning. And so I'm in that seat, but I'm also in the seat of, I'm curious and I want to ask, but I'm afraid to ask because I might say the wrong thing. And yeah, so I know those are the statements, not questions. And I invite feedback, anything you would like to say, either one of you.
Yeah. So for me personally, when I think about the fear in us about saying the wrong thing, comes in part because um, we um, we employ we oftentimes employ structures from a place of fear, shame, and blame. And it won't lead to liberation. It doesn't lead to people feeling interested or curious about knowing more. So, how we learn to hold our own. And again, the tricky part is that, representation is so important, because if I can't find anyone like me, and there's not a room enough to have those conversations, and like me, not being the same identities, but that same desire to be in a world with many things and many experiences and delight in that, then I may find myself closing off who I am. And in that, we lose so much of our language and our capacity to interact with one another, because we're not really interacting with ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So when somebody says to me, I'm just so afraid I'll say the wrong thing,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm working with them and coaching them towards capacity, I usually talk about what that would look like, because what it means is I don't believe I have the capacity to meet feedback and receive it, to know what to do on how to repair harm when I cause it, and how to respond when somebody says ouch, which is a natural part of relationship. I have not met anybody in this whole world so far that has been able to, with a sense of self and honesty, say there's a relationships, I have this relationship and this relationship, and I never get hurt in those relationships, and we never disagree with one another. It doesn't exist. So it is then that we grow our capacity to actually respond when we cause harm, which we will.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thank you, Mel.
Beautiful.
Did I hear Walter? For those of you watching, Mel has a beautiful dog named Walter. I wanted to say pup, but yeah. Cheryl, you had something to say.
No, I think what came up for me as well, and I just love how Mel explains things. It's so beautiful. But what came up for me when I was listening to you, Marg, as well, was assumptions, how we as human beings make assumptions based on our upbringing, our conditioning, all that kind of thing. The example, for example, when you said, yes, I'm married, and somebody says, well, what does your husband do? Or, something like that. There's an assumption there that it's to a man. And so many of the other examples that we've had here as well. So I think that's another area where we can really be more aware of when we make a statement or we say something is, am I making an assumption here? Or, is this a relevant question kind of thing? So that was just something that I thought about.
And sure.
And just in response to that, I could say, I'll go to an appointment, and somebody will say, your husband, and I'll say, actually, I'm married to a woman and whatever. And there is often oh, I'm so sorry. And I don't feel offended.
Mm.
And so there's a responsibility on someone too,
Mm-hmm.
for their response.
Absolutely.
And I don't choose to be offended. I choose to perhaps provide an education, information, just information. No, this is who I am, and this is who I am partnered with, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah. And not everybody's like you, right?
Too bad.
Mel, you were going to say something?
Yeah, so a couple of pieces. The first one is that, again, when we talk about feedback or response, is that it could be as simple as saying, oh, it's actually my wife. And I agree with Mark. Oftentimes it's, oh, like, thanks for letting me know. Many times, though, it can also sound like, oh, like, I'm so sorry. And what we need to understand in those moments is that that's why it's so important to be empowered in your own life and capable of knowing who you are, so that you don't take up that whole space with how you're feeling and what you're doing, and it becomes a full thing about that. And it's the same piece for me in reverse. I hold a lot of empathy for myself and for community members who are oftentimes facing experiences of othering or marginalization. Because when you get told something enough, or when your experience doesn't have any room and you don't have connection to people, so I have communities that love and support and care about me. It means I can interact with the world and be she heard on repeat, and navigate that without feeling it's a cue for me of how much space there really is for the experience, but it isn't something that has me offended, but I'm not deeply leaning in either. And that's the natural consequence. So part of the motivation and desire to become more multi-parted as a person and as a practice is because I want to connect with a multitude of people with a multitude of experiences. So I need to have capacity to be able to do that, which means I'm going to be able to make mistakes, get back up, own them, apologize, make amends. I'm going to take feedback. I'm going to really understand the difference between alone and on my own, because on my own sees myself in it, but sees how I'm supported and can acknowledge that. Alone will resist the wisdom and support. And it's a wound we hold where I should have already known. I should have this, I should have that. And so we create distance, but what we really want is connection.
Beautiful point. So, for those of us, what came to my mind is the explanation of how would you explain our responses when we don't realize they're actually more about us than anybody else.
Yeah, so I would offer that we have a responsibility to know what our activation looks like. And so when I think about that in nervous system responses, what does my fight flight look like? How do I create armor so that I'm not feeling as impacted? How do I create states of fawning and pleasing, which I remember hearing somebody say to me, fawning and pleasing is its own form of emotional unavailability. You rob every single person of the chance to know you, to know who you are, what you want, what you need, what you desire. And so that fawning and pleasing then means that the person in front of us will, on some level, definitely on that spiritual, energetic level, feel the disconnection, feel the lack of authenticity that's there. And or we dismiss or we turn away from things, or we, paint the silver line around it. And all of those things detract from being able to be present with what is, right? Our nervous system responses carry us away. And so that's for me where practices and tools toward presence come into play. I'm speaking about mindfulness. I'm speaking about the power of a breath, so that we can place, as one of the practitioners I used to work with, Teresa Mayer, says, hey, there's an ocean between what I'm feeling and what I'm going to express. So learning how to create space within ourselves and for those emotions to experience a multitude of them without jumping to response, then means we're able to be with people more present, and we're able to come back into our body. So those practices of mindfulness, meditation, prayer, affirmations, those are part of the tools that we have available to us that bring us back into our body so that we don't hijack conversations or have somebody who's in fight and flight and somebody who's in fawn and please and somebody who's in, avoid, dismiss, and on it goes so that we are landing and able to be present. And so, like I said, that tool of epiphany, I want to sit down and learn something I didn't know before. I want to see how I bring things to the world and how I receive things from the people around me, and name those people, name them, see them, honor what they bring to your life. And in that, you're also going to grow your ability to honor yourself and what you bring.
Yeah. Yeah, beautiful. The thought came to me is that I want to acknowledge too that there may be people who don't want to, right? Like I think about just somebody I know who I'm on a journey, I'm on a spiritual journey, I'm curious, I'm learning, I'm, wanting to learn more and practice, because it is about walking the talk. And so I love the way you say practice, because I think it takes a lot of practice to be a multi-partiality practitioner. So, but then there are those people that are not interested in this side of life, and that's okay too. So I just want to acknowledge that, because I know that there are people out there. However, for those of us that are, it's an amazing journey, and I'm just so grateful for your perspective and for your experience, for your journey of learning more, so that you can even teach us more. And you're not teaching by teaching, you're teaching by being and embodying what you understand.
Yeah, by living the messiness of life. I was thinking though about, hey, I don't want to have this experience. Again, being able to have someone be in that presence with you is so much more valuable. And the story I go to is this, that we oftentimes tell ourselves what is okay to be or not okay to be, rather than being with what is and watching it transform. And so I'm a parent with 5 kids, and it's its own challenge. And I ended up in a therapy session, and the therapist said to me, oh, you're maybe afraid of rejection. And in that moment, what I could feel in my body was, nah, dude, I'm just over parenting. Like, I don't want to parent anymore right now. And so because of the practices I have, I allowed myself to hold that relatively shitty thought, but hold it and be with it. And I quickly moved to a place of empathy of what it would feel like to be my kid, having a parent that's just over it. I moved to a place of empathy for myself. Hey, I don't have all the answers. Like, I don't know either. And then I found myself wanting to lean in and do something different. And that all happened within the course of a day. And I wonder what it would have looked like had I not given myself any room to have that feeling or experience for a moment, and just kept telling myself, you need to be a caring parent, because I'm pretty sure my kid can feel the difference between me acting like I'm caring and me actually caring. And it took less than 24 hours for me to be like, oh my gosh, but I love that being and I want to lean in. But I needed to first be like, no, dude, in this moment, I feel over it, and be with that and allow that to be there, not so I become it, but because I can hold it then and look at it and ask what it's trying to teach me. And what it was teaching me was the ways for which I was carrying rather than caring, and caretaking. And my kid was getting deprived of my actual presence and what I actually would want to give. And that meant I needed to meet something else before I would be able to come in that space. Because I actually don't meet many people who would say, I don't want to feel more connected. I don't want to feel more enriched in my life. And I don't want to be able to be seen and heard and understood and have a sense of unshakable peace within me. It's that we have to meet pieces of ourselves, and we may resist that if we don't have the tools like setting up boundaries or having a sense of who we are. Then it's really, really tough to jump from that to I am this thing. And that's where I think we can get disintegrated practices that aren't embodied.
I think recognizing that it takes work, and that work is, that's really about getting to know yourself before you can get to know anything or anyone else. I think. But so one of the things, we're coming to the end of the show, I can't believe it. And what a deep show it's been. What's one small way that listeners could begin practicing multi-partiality this week?
Maybe to ask yourself, hey, can you be with the truth that community is both healing and harmful? That you are both shitty and magnificent, that relationships are challenging work and people are annoying, and they hold a power and a potency richer than you could ever imagine. When we can start to be with more of it, rather than holding the idea that community is somehow wholeheartedly healing, we can be with both of it. And I would challenge into that space of, hey, how can we be in relationship with other people if we're not in relationship with ourselves? Well, we do it all the time. It's just the quality of the relating. So it's relationships are challenging. So you choose your difficult. Where do you want to lean in? And how do you want to grow so that you can be able to connect, and that relationship with yourself is one of the pieces that you're invited into. Risking knowing yourself will be a worthwhile journey. It's worthy of you.
I think in relationship with others is how you measure your relationship with yourself. Like you said, it's a reflection, right? With how we respond and how we react to things, and then taking a closer look at that. And what does that mean?
Yeah, because we can't heal relationship wounds outside of relationship.
Yeah.
We can't come together as community and do something different without coming together as a community and meeting each other in our differences, right? So that idea that, well, like I need to do this before we grow our skills to be able to come into it and meet it and run into each other and do something differently. That's it. Just do something differently toward love, toward care, towards awareness, towards accountability, towards healing, towards restoring.
Beautiful. I think you've given us a lot to think about. And Mark, before we end the show, is there anything else you would like to ask or say to Mel?
I appreciate your being on the show and all the wisdom that you have shared today. And I love examples. And when you spoke about your epiphany, I'll say, when you had this feeling like, okay, I don't want to be a parent right now, or I don't want to parent, and worked through that process, you first went to self, or second or third, you went to self before moving forward, and we're fully present, I'm guessing, because you went through that process. It married with something that I was talking about earlier. Before I can say yes to something, I need to remember first, is it going to serve me? How am I going to be fed in this situation? And so thinking of self first and doing the process. So thank you for being on the show. Cap and gown always with me.
Yeah,
not going to graduate. Yeah.
And thank you to our viewers for joining us today. Be sure to tune in next week when our next guest will be, I'm sure, just as interesting and on a different topic. But Mel, you really have given us a lot to think about, I'll speak for myself. You've given me a lot to speak about and a lot to contemplate. And I just love how you have explained it all. So until then, please like, share, and subscribe so others can find and join these meaningful conversations too. From all of us here, thank you. And remember, keep having courageous conversations. See you next week.